Christ is born, Your Grace, dear clergy, dear friends. It's a great honor for me on behalf of the entire Lviv Business School team to welcome you here. It's a great pleasure for us to see so many friends and so many faces. Those faces that have been with us for such a long time. You inspired us, you motivated us, you instilled hope into us. Together we have survived a lot of different moments of ups and downs, the Maidan, the revolution of dignity. We proved to the Ukrainian society that a community united by common values and mutual trust can become a high-quality driving force in Ukraine. Today, we often hear the words of mistrust and dissatisfaction, but today we want to focus on hope and the future, because in our opinion, business and education are those two components that can create and shape a much better future for all of us. Therefore, I'm very pleased to give the floor to the first Vice-Rector of the Ukrainian Catholic University, Taras Dobko, and he will introduce the participants of our discussion today. All of them are a part of this very important project, which we call the Lviv Business School of the Ukrainian Catholic University. Thank you. Christ is born, dear colleagues, or I think it's better to say dear alumni, dear students, dear faculty members, dear friends, dear acquaintances, dear partners. We are very happy to welcome you here today at our discussion dedicated to business and education as a beacon of hope for Ukraine. It doesn't really matter what you do. If you want to achieve a big success or if you want to do a great cause, then usually you have a story behind, and each good story has a beginning. Sometimes it's a very modest beginning, but the right one. Otherwise, the story would not have become a successful one. If to talk about the story of the Lviv Business School of the Ukrainian Catholic University, we also had our beginning. It all started with a meeting. It started with a meeting of those people, those companies and organizations that acted as co-founders of the Lviv Business School of the Ukrainian Catholic University. And during our discussion today, we really wanted to bring together the representatives of these companies. And we wanted to do that not only to discuss the 10 years history. We don't really want to focus on figures and numbers from our budget, but we want to contemplate on certain issues that we all are concerned about. Roxolana has already mentioned in her introductory word that business and education can be a beacon of hope. So is it about hope, or maybe it's about mistrust? How can we use business and education to shape a positive image of Ukraine in the world? Business and ethics. We also want to talk a little bit about how we can make big goals and big objectives human and humane. So this is something that we will be discussing with a very interesting bunch of people. I want to introduce our participants, and I will start with His Grace, Borys Gudziak, who is the head of the Saint Volodymyr Eparchy in Paris, and he is also the president of the Ukrainian Catholic University. You're welcome, Your Grace. I also want to invite Sophia Opatska, who is the dean and founder of the Lviv Business School, and she's also Vice-Rector of the Ukrainian Catholic University for studies and training. We also have Yaroslav Ruschyshyn present here. He's a co-founder of the Lviv Business School. He is an honorary senator, and he's also the founder of the Trotolla enterprise. I want to invite Mr. Vasyl Danylyak. He's a member of the advisory board of the Galnaftogaz concern, and he's also vice president for financial and investment issues. And the last but not least is Yaroslav Lyubinets, who is the co-founder and the chair of the board of SoftServe company. It's been 10 years. Is it a lot, or maybe it's very little? doesn't really matter. I think that it's more than enough to undergo substantial changes. And Lviv Business School was not the only one that has changed over the last 10 years. The companies and the co-founders of the school have changed. The Ukrainian Catholic University has undergone changes, and the Ukrainian society has become different as well. And I have a question to Mr. Yaroslav Ruschyshyn, and he will understand why I'm addressing this question to him in the first place. But I also want to ask this question to Yaroslav and Vasyl. Is the perception of business different in the Ukrainian society? Has it changed for the better? And if we have positive changes, what can we do to reinforce and strengthen these changes? Christ is born. Well, I'm an optimist. I'm an incurable optimist, to be frank, but I don't think that there are any changes. We do a lot of work with the Ukrainian Catholic University, with the authorities to develop and shape trust. You might have noticed that each speaker always talks about trust, hope, mistrust, disappointment. So these are very common issues right now. But what is the problem? I will try to explain what the problem is. I read it somewhere. The problem is that the post-Soviet person has a different perception of wealth. Wealth for us is something limited. Americans, for example, know that you can create and multiply wealth. For example, you earn and then you buy a building, and so there's a different perception of wealth. And in our country, wealth is something limited. So if I earned a certain amount of money, that it means that I stole your chunk or your piece. So this is the mold that we need to break. Unless we do that, we will have problems in Ukraine. Why do we have problems in Ukraine? Because we have business in power. And from this perspective, we cannot really overestimate the role of the Ukrainian Catholic University, because here we try to create this platform where we can get together and have discussions on a different level, on a level of trust and constructive dialogue. But honestly, I don't really see any major changes in comparison with when I started my business. Even if we look around, there are a lot of movements prior to the elections. We don't really have any right-wing parties. We have only left-wing parties. So it's all about taking away from someone and giving to someone. So you take away from the rich and then you give to the poor. So I think that in this environment, with this paradigm of business, I don't think that we will have this trust and any changes in the perception of business. I partially agree with Yaroslav. On the one hand, we have a society that was shaped back in the Soviet times, and the same is true about our business people. Most of them were born in the Soviet times. And back then, it was commonplace to consider that the government had to provide people with everything they needed. So as a result, everyone waits for something from the top, from the government. But over the times of Ukraine's independence, over the time of the development of Ukrainian business, no one has taught people to behave in a different way. No one has changed this paradigm of thinking that business is the one filling the government budget, public business, private business, and without business, without successful business, without business that produces added value and fills the government budget, you cannot really have anything as a citizen, because basically a business creates proceeds for the government budget. Without that, we will not be able to have anything. So we need to change that paradigm. People should have reverence and respect for business. People should look up to those people who generate ideas, who create jobs, who create products that can be consumed both within the country and abroad. This is something that we need to cherish from early childhood, from kindergarten and then throughout school and university. This is something that you need to raise in little children, and then we will have the same perception as in the US, for example. Our authorities like to say that business people are like sacred cows. You're supposed to protect them, you're supposed to support them in all ways possible, because if we support and help business, then basically we lend a helping hand to ourselves. So this paradigm hasn't changed yet, but everyone is doing their best to break the mold. And once we do that, then we will have business on center stage, and all other people will understand that the more successful businesses are in Ukraine, the more efforts people apply to create success stories among businesses, the more benefits for all of us. I'm more optimistic than the two previous speakers, maybe because I represent the IT business. It's still quite new, and we work mostly with foreign clients, and the average age of our staff is about 28 years. 20 years ago, it was about 26, 27 years. So we don't really take away from anyone. We don't really have to share with anyone. We just add to what already exists, and we try to multiply. I can see that there's a lot of negative emotions and feelings about business, because all the money that we have in Ukraine, this is not earned money, but this is shared money or distributed money accumulated by people many years ago. That's why there are so many hard feelings about business. When people see real success stories related to business, then of course there is respect and there's reverence. I think that there's a way out, and there are two solutions here. First of all, I think that we should develop small and medium businesses. We need to have showcases when an ordinary person creates something new and earns their living, and this way we can change this perception. And the second solution is associated with what has already been mentioned. It's all about how we perceive the proceeds for the budget. In Ukraine, we have the state tax service, while in the US, they call it the Internal Revenue Service. So everyone has to understand that tax is basically income for everyone. So tax is the foundation that the government uses to build roads, to develop infrastructure, to construct hospitals. If we as a society get this paradigm, then we will change our attitude to business. Dear colleagues, you all mentioned the phrase successful business or success stories of businesses. I think that this positive perception largely depends on how business representatives understand their success and how the success is interpreted by the external audience. What is this success about? Is it about being faster, better, or more optimal? Or maybe there are some other components that come into play here, like to be more fair, to be more humane, or to be more interesting. So I have a question to His Grace Borys Gudziak, and also to Ms. Sophia Opatska and Vasyl. We have some successful business people and business entities of a new generation. What should they be guided by while making decisions? What are the arguments that they should use? And what's the place of the interests of Ukraine, economy, and some global challenges that Ukraine is facing in all of this? Well, I want to usurp the microphone, if you allow me, because I also want to answer the first question. I want to, first of all, welcome all the people present here, government officials, our governor, dear friends and partners. It's very nice to see all your faces. There are about 150 of you. All of your faces are fresh and healthy, and I can see sparkling eyes. I can see the regional authorities present here. There are some MPs present here. Well, at least one MP is definitely present here. There are some representatives of the city authorities present here as well. And we also have Vice-Rector Sviatoslav. Wave your hand, Sviatoslav. Say hi to everyone. And we also have faculty members here, students. So many faces. So this is the change. This is the change that we can observe in business, around business, in our city, in our region. So these faces are the change. They embody the change. People meet, they get together. I think that the attitude towards business within the Ukrainian Catholic University has undergone drastic changes. When Yaroslav attracted other colleagues of his and other partners to our university, we had some people in our environment who considered that this business school was something superfluous. And they even put forward pragmatic arguments to support their stance. They said, if we have a business school, then everyone will think that we are so wealthy and affluent, and no one will want to donate any money to us. So it was a voice from the US, an American voice. We have a lot of people from the Ukrainian Catholic University present here. Not everyone is happy about the successes and achievements of the Lviv Business School. Maybe there's even envy and jealousy on the part of some representatives. But I can state with certainty that for me personally and for all the representatives of the university management, the emergence of the Lviv Business School contributed to major changes within our university. So basically, this business school created ripples around the university. Now we have new networks of friendship and trust. We learn from the Ukrainian Catholic University. The Ukrainian Catholic University learns from the business school. And I also believe that the business school itself and all its students and the great community that the business school created has been enriching itself all this time. And I think that we are in search of a new language for efficient communication. The Lviv Business School was represented in Hawaii, in some other countries. The school purchased a school in Samis, and I think it changes the face and the image of business in Ukraine. 4 years ago, 50 representatives of the Lviv Business School community stood up at a banquet in New York, and they spoke out, and this is something that we hear from the clergy representatives. So it's like receiving Christ into your hands. You hear from the clergy that my eyes have seen salvage. So people in New York realized that the Ukrainian business is supportive of the Ukrainian Catholic University. So we have business, education, and spirituality. That's why this anniversary is of such utmost importance. That's why you are vital. Your very presence is essential for us. Last night, I was sitting with Viktor Ivanchik and his wife. We were dining out. We were in Kyiv, and Viktor told us how important it was to hear the words of blessing about business from the deceased, His Grace Lyubomir. Victor asked, what should I do? And he just said, do your own thing. You are creating jobs. You are providing people with opportunities to express their creativity. And His Grace Lyubomir was the greatest moral authority in Ukraine. So the train has already departed. It's on the way. Of course, there's still a long way for this train, but I think that the understanding of business, or in other words, the understanding of the important aspects of human life, is maturing. Now I want to shift to your second question. Can you repeat your question, because it was quite complex and complicated, so I'm not even sure I remember this question. Well, some speakers think that Taras answered the question in the way he formulated his question. Ethics, new jobs, tax payment. For me personally, success is about joy and peace in all its forms and manifestations. You can have an employer, or you can have an entrepreneur. You have some employees, you have some staff members. Do you become more noble as a result of your work? So this is the key question for me. You might manufacture chocolates or beer or pizzas, or maybe high quality shoes and clothes, or maybe you are into software development, or maybe you fill cars with clean gas. I think I've mentioned all the businesses present here. I really hope so. So this is a picture that I have in front of my eyes. An entrepreneur, for example, created something, and there are consumers of that product or that service. So, in my opinion, it's very important that we are guided in our work towards something that comes from God, something that we were created for. And I want to go back to what I said at the very outset. This is something that I can already see today. Therefore, I'm filled with big hope when I think of the future of Ukrainian entrepreneurship. And I do believe that Lviv has a very important role to play in this great cause. We must create a new quality of Ukrainian business. And we have an MP present here, and he's a graduate of the Lviv Business School. We don't really have an MP that graduated from the theology department or the history department of our university, but I really hope that we will have more of our alumni in the parliament, and I also really hope that this experience will help our MPs or other managers remember the most important things that we were created for. And this is something that we should draw most satisfaction and pleasure from. Christ is born. I just want to add to what His Grace said, and I will allow myself to remember one story. 10 years ago, it all started when we opened the Lviv Business School, we thought that there were so many people who sought business education, that there were so many people who we could be useful for. And I'm sure that Oksana Kulikovska remembers it very well. During the first half a year, we realized that not that many business representatives had any thoughts of education. In 2008, not that many business representatives were mindful of their professional development or some business education. So it was a tall order for us because, of course, you want to give added value. You are ready to provide it, but at that time, there was not understanding of the value of this added value. And in this context, I'm very grateful to all the people present on this stage and all the people present in the audience, because they all tried to support us and tell us you just need to muster up all the patience that you have. You just need to build it and then people will come. That's why I'm so happy and comforted. When I see so many faces in this room, I realize that this project is definitely of importance and necessity for us and for all of you. And one of the success criteria for business in Ukraine, in my opinion, is the desire to learn. And I'm really pleased that the Ukrainian business representatives finally understand that business is not only about competition with neighbors or competition with neighboring regions or about becoming the best or number one on the Ukrainian market. There's a more ambition, there's different thinking among Ukrainian business representatives right now. We've been talking a lot about leadership. They say that leadership has meaning in a particular context. So once again, I think that the measure for our success, and I say our because I think that I'm also a part of business, so the measure for our success will be our image and our leadership in the context that we create today or created yesterday and will create tomorrow, and the decisions that we make as part of this context. Of course, we might be different from our partners abroad, but if we are here in business together, then of course we have to manifest and embody leadership. And this is something that I want to encourage you to do. Well, if we have a look at some complex things from a simple perspective, then we will realize that each business is called to change our life for the better. It doesn't really matter whether it's a company that works with the end user or any other business entity. The measure for the success of this business is a better service or a higher quality product. If people started consuming this better product or service, then their quality of life has improved. And by purchasing a particular service or product, people express their trust for this company. It's like confirmation that this business has changed their life for the better. For example, a company produced a better tractor for agriculture. It's a more productive and efficient tractor, and you have companies who started using this product. So it means that this company also increased and improved its performance. So in my opinion, business is destined to change the life for the better. And if you cannot change the life for the better, then you just become broke. You get kicked out of the market. You are not appreciated by the society. You are not appreciated by consumers, and such useless businesses fall by the wayside. People are not happy to work for such businesses, because if you as a business do change something, then you have happy employees, because these employees know that they create a new product. They are motivated to keep learning. Any industry, if it's a new industry, in particular, if it's a new industry, it changes very fast. You need to adapt. And what is business about? Basically, business is about people who go to work from day to day, and it's about people who invest their intelligence and their hard efforts to change something, to become better. They wrap their minds around how to offer a cheaper and better product or service, and this makes them happy. So if you as a business create a good product and you receive satisfaction from that, then of course all your employees, the business founders are also content. Even cleaning ladies or gas station operators feel much better if they work for a successful company, a company that indeed creates a great product, in comparison with working for a mediocre company. Or maybe you are an employee of a company that you know doesn't really offer any added value. Therefore, the measure for business success is whether this business changes life for the better or not. If a business entity changes life for the better in a particular domain or in a particular area of expertise, then this business is successful, and then definitely this business is profitable, because these are interconnected and intertwined components. I'm ready with my next question, and it's a question to Yaroslav and His Grace, and it's a continuation of the previous question. Should universities and higher educational institutions and business speak the same language? I'm sure that it's common knowledge that many universities incorporate vocabulary and processes into their practices that are associated with business, like strategic plan, outsourcing, more aggressive labor relations, auditing, financial indicators and metrics, and many other terms and vocab associated with business. Is it victory for the mission of the university, or maybe it's more like betrayal and treason? The terminology that we use is very important. I really hoped that our school will not be called a business school, that we would use a Ukrainian word instead. But the language is changing. And these are not only superficial modifications, but I think that there's profound symbolism behind these vocab changes. The fact that these terms exist and they symbolize something is positive, on condition that they do not replace other things. All over the world, we can see a crisis of humanitarian education. If you compare the universities now and the universities that we had in late 19th century or early 20th centuries, philology or Slav studies or Byzantine studies, Egyptology, all these disciplines are taking a back seat. In the US, in the past, there were a lot of departments of the Russian language and literature, and there were also entire dedicated units working with Slavonic languages. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a lot of these disciplines faded away. Instead, there are some new departments and disciplines right now, like Islamic studies or Muslim studies, but without philosophy, without the comprehension of the human word or even God's word, we become much poorer as mankind. maybe Sophia knows it better, but there are a lot of business schools who transferred their terminologies, their strategic plans to universities. But at the same time, these business schools borrow and learn a lot from these classical universities. In particular, there's an exchange of faculty members between business schools and classical universities, because if you want to become a successful business, it's not only about financial metrics and performance. You sometimes need to receive some consultancy or advice on topics related to human feelings, human emotions, and human soul. Whenever you face an issue, sometimes you ask yourself what to do, and you answer that you need to do this or this. But I think that sometimes it's better to say you need to do this and this. So it's not about either or, it's more about and. I will be more practical and pragmatic in my answer. So the question was, should universities and businesses speak the same language? Well, of course, undoubtedly, it's a rhetorical question. Not only should they speak the same language, but they should contemplate on the same issues. They should pay attention to the same problem. But who should be in the front line, business or universities? I think that nowadays education is experiencing tough times in Ukraine. And we remember that the blossoming of education and science took place in the 1960s. And what we observe now is just a result of inertia. Why were universities and scientific institutions so successful and important in the 1960s? Because they all were a part of great causes like rocket development or space research. And currently the old professors have no clue what's happening. So how can we be talking about innovative and pioneering universities? That's why it's so important to have a showcase of the Lviv Business School. I was really surprised how easy it was to launch a master's program. For example, when we introduced a master's program in computer science, it was very easy, and it was easy because there was a dialogue from the very outset. I remember that Taras came to us and said that they wanted to launch a program in computer science. So we had a meeting, we discussed everything, and then in 2 weeks everything was implemented. Then another meeting, once again, everything we agreed on during that meeting was embodied and translated into reality in 2 weeks. And I remember that we had about 30 or 50 people, professors from other universities gathered. And when the Lviv Business School spoke, the business representatives were really supportive, and the representatives of these other universities were really discouraging because they thought that it would not work out, that the Ministry of Education and Science would not support this program. But we've had this program in computer science for 3 years, and there are even similar programs in the Polytechnic University and other universities. And there's also a new program in computer sciences in a Kyiv-based university. And I'm convinced that the change of paradigm started at the Lviv Business School at the Ukrainian Catholic University, and it rippled around Ukraine and reached even Kyiv. I want to build a bridge to another question which is associated with the previous one, and I would like to ask you, Yaroslav, to answer this question. It's a question related to competition and cooperation. Yaroslav has already mentioned that within our university, on the one hand, we believe in competition, and we think that we need to have more higher educational institutions. We need to have better universities, but at the same time, on the other hand, we need to have profound and tight cooperation. In your opinion, and in the opinion of Sophia and Vasyl, how ready is Ukrainian business to compete within this cooperation? Is a win-win situation possible here? Well, win-win, everything is clear, doesn't really need to be translated. Well, I remember that I've read one thing somewhere. I'm full of quotes, but I don't remember where I took them from. In the 19th century, competitors wanted to devour each other. And in the 21st century, rivals and competitors sit down at the same table and they think together how to multiply this pie that they have. And I think that IT cluster is a great example here. We have some of the founders of the IT cluster present here. We have SoftServe, we have some other representatives of the IT cluster. When we voiced this idea to them and when we said, let's create the IT cluster, there were a lot of doubts, there were a lot of hesitations. It's good that we had an opportunity to go to Borys Gudziak's office and everyone decided to unite and consolidate their efforts. I'm not an IT guy, I make shoes and clothes, but once again, I think it's a win-win situation because the IT cluster is very independent and self-sufficient right now, and they are making miracles right now. I might voice outdated numbers, but as far as I remember, one IT employee creates 3 to 4 new jobs because we have a lot of IT representatives who develop software or do something on order. So we need just 100,000 IT people in Lviv to be a prospering and successful city. And I really hope that we will be able to do that without the Chinese, or maybe vice versa. We need some impetus, we need some stimulus, you know, because we've been singing carols for 1 or 2 months. We've been celebrating Christmas for almost 2 months. But I want to go back to the terminology and the vocab that we use. I would like to put aside business terms and concepts. I want to talk more about the language. We have a great phenomenon in Ukraine. We can speak Ukrainian and not understand each other. So I cannot really understand the tax authorities and the customs service. I speak Ukrainian, they speak Ukrainian. We write letters to the government from the Anti-Corruption Forum or from some other entities. We write to them and we do not receive any responses. And it is related to the productivity of this language. Recently, we attended a startup hub meeting, great young people there. Yanika Mirilo shared some of her achievements in Estonia, and one of the professors of our universities stood up and started speaking in Ukrainian, but no one had clue what he was saying, even though he spoke our native tongue. And this is the unique characteristic of the Ukrainian Catholic University. We all speak the same language here. We said that we would do something in 2 weeks, and we deliver in 2 weeks. And I think that it's a foundation for building productivity. And then you can also use it as a business for enhancing competitiveness of our business. And I really hope that we will go even further in this regard. Well, we need to get some fresh blood. I'm not a theologist, so I will not really talk about sacrifices, but I fully agree that maybe we need to make it a little bit more painful to move the process forward. I want to say a couple of words about cooperation. I think that here we have a great showcase of competition and cooperation. I cannot really refer to any specific figures and numbers, but in each group, each participant of our training programs found at least one person that they wanted to network with, that they wanted to cooperate with. Most likely those were not competitors, but I'm 100% positive that each of our students found something useful, some handy contacts and connections as part of their studies. We have a lot of people here who maybe do not know each other, and I discussed it with my team yesterday that I encouraged each of my team members to meet at least 2 or 3 people today that they do not know. So if my team members start stalking you or pestering you, do not be surprised. We have over 150 people gathered here. There will be even more later, and I really hope that you have come here not only to celebrate and have some food and beverages. I want to be pragmatic about our discussion and meeting today. Network, mingle, try to meet new people. Even if nothing comes out of it, you will definitely find people who share your values. And it's not that easy to find such people. And I also want to add to what His Grace said. By the way, Your Grace, recently I saw an article saying that the best CEOs are people who have a degree in liberal arts or philosophy. Why so? It's not my theory, but this is something that you hear a lot from business education representatives, from the deans of business schools. Business is in need of not depth of knowledge, but more width of knowledge. Because basically the times of narrow specialized experts are over. As CEOs and managers, we need to have a broad outlook. We need to have a well-rounded education. That's why the width of thinking or the width of mindset is very important. And you can get this width of knowledge in liberal arts and philosophy. So if we as CEOs do not have a degree in that, then of course we can compensate by reading or having joint discussions, or maybe the humanities department of the Ukrainian Catholic University will launch a new program in liberal arts for CEOs and business management. But it's a recent trend globally, and the faster we adapt to this trend, the better we feel in the future. It was very interesting to listen to Yaroslav when he said that in the past competitors really rivaled, and now they sit down at the same table. Well, in my business, it's very difficult for us as competitors to sit down at the same table, even to sit down at neighboring tables. In my company, we have a lot of managers, we have a lot of staff members who have a business degree. Some of them graduated from business schools in Ukraine or abroad, including some top business schools globally. Some of them work in Ukraine, some of them work abroad, and Sophia is saying that he definitely means the Lviv Business School as well. The question of whether business education is necessary and meaningful is not always easy to answer, because this answer is not on the surface. If you want to obtain a business education, that you need to sacrifice a part of your adult life, you need to sacrifice a part of your professional life, because I mean, you cannot just cut out 1 or 2 years from your life and do nothing, just study. So if you have a company, then you cannot just leave your company behind and become a student of a business school. Such cases are not successful. I mean, cases when business people leave their professional life and delve into studies, because when they go back to their company, then this company is already different, and this manager cannot really have a feel for the new company. So I don't think that you can have that much use of just diving full head into studies. So if you become a student, then you need to understand what the benefit is from you. I want to refer to one story. At our university, we had one girl with a bad eyesight, but she would never wear glasses because she was embarrassed. And one day, in her 5th year of studies, she decided to finally put on glasses, and she asked, do you really see everything like that? Do you really have that clear picture? So in the past, she didn't even understand without glasses that you can have a different perspective of the world, then you can have more precision, that you can see everything more clearly. In my opinion, if you are a mature person, if you have a sober and mature mind, and you become a student of a business school, then you should start seeing more clearly. You should start seeing those things that you thought in the past were not that important, even though these things are indeed significant, in particular for business. So I think that business education is called to help people see things more clearly, because I don't think that a business school can help people manifest skills in such a short period of time, but a business school should provide people with a completely different vision, with the ability to see the most important. So basically, business education is about teaching people to see the most important things, like, for example, do business math on a napkin. Because whatever great idea you have, whatever great project you want to launch, it all starts with a small piece of paper where you do some basic math, you make some basic calculations, you have faith and confidence in that project or in that idea, and then you start consolidating other people, you start galvanizing support, and then this project and idea get translated into EBITDA or sales and a turnover. But usually it all starts with a rough sketch on a napkin or with a helicopter view. And at that point, you should either make a pause and have another look at your business and think whether you are on the right track or not, whether you are running in the right direction. Because sometimes we measure the speed of running, but you overlook the direction of running. Are you running in the right direction? Maybe the rest of the industry has already turned around and the industry is running to the right and you continue running to the left and you're so happy that you're running so fast. So this is the global and understanding that you should obtain from business educations. We can also touch upon some philosophical issues here. For example, which skills should people receive from education, including business education? You might have heard or seen the report of Alibaba's founder, at the World Economic Forum, and he mentioned in his report that considering the development of artificial intelligence, a lot of industries become automated and robotized, and a lot of skills that are inherent in people right now will be performed by machines and devices in the future. Therefore, humans should focus on acquiring those skills that machines will most likely will not be able to master. I cannot say machines will never acquire, because in the past computers played chess in a very primitive manner, and no one believed that computers would be able to master abstract thinking. But right now we can see that computers are much better than chess professionals. So it's very important for us as humans to have this point of differentiation. If we want to be competitive and successful in the future, we need to create also something intangible, because currently computers and machines cannot produce something intangible. And this is the primary mission of education. So it's all about acquiring a point of differentiation from computers and machines. And in this regard, all educational institutions, including the Ukrainian Catholic University and Lviv Business School, should focus on that. His Grace and Sophia mentioned that we have a shortage of humanities professionals. So maybe we can create something that is at the intersection of technology and humanities. Maybe this will create this point of differentiation that you cannot reproduce. We all want to be unique, and if you come to a business school from the IT industry, you want to raise the bar a little bit higher. Or maybe you come to business education from clothes making industry or from food retail. You also want to climb one notch up. And this point of differentiation currently is something intangible, something you cannot really feel and touch, but we must find this point of differentiation. And once we find this point, then we will receive more added value. We have already talked for quite a long time, and I think the time has come for questions from the audience. Let me add just one thing. I'm looking at the people present here, and I can see a lot of young faces present here. These are those people who didn't know anything about the Lviv Business School 10 years ago. And even if you know the story, you might have forgotten it. The beginning of any story is important and interesting. And I would like to ask Yaroslav whether he remembers what it was like, how the Lviv Business School project started. Can you share the story? So this is the first question from the audience. Yesterday, I watched a movie about Churchill, and the entire movie was about making a choice, what to do, where to go, in which direction to move. And I remember that I had the same feelings when we had Medvedchuk as a neighbor. We had criminal cases. We had about 40 trials, and I also had a lot of questions whether I was doing the right thing. And I received the answer to that question in the Ukrainian Catholic University. There was a meeting of the senior managers. His Beatitude Lyubomir was there, Professor Marinovich was also present, and the rest of the elite. And they said just one thing to me: you are doing the right thing. Of course, we will not help you. Don't even expect any support. But that was more than enough. And this is something that Vasyl said, that I knew that I was moving in the right direction. I was running in the right direction. we discussed it within the Univ group for a long time. I'm a Galician businessman, so I can be honest about how arrogant, lazy, and snobbish we are. Sometimes we're so lazy that we don't even want to go to Kyiv to get some training there, let alone abroad. Then, I mean, if you do not want to go to Kyiv, then you need to create a business school or a training opportunity nearby. And back then, we realized that there was a need for business education in Lviv. The business school that was founded by Penzenik could not really deliver the necessary quality. So I had that idea, and where do I go with this idea? I didn't really have any second thoughts. I went to the Ukrainian Catholic University right away. I went to the Ukrainian Catholic University, and I also went to two other universities, and two other universities started calling back, and the Ukrainian Catholic University was silent. Okay, I can see there are different interpretations of this story. So we had to wait for half a year to receive an answer, a consent from His Grace. And later, when I became a senator, I found out that His Grace Borys wanted to consult with each cleaning lady about this Lviv business school. So he wanted to make sure that everyone was supportive of this idea. So that was the origin of the Lviv Business School. It was on Parkova Street, and we all were really nervous and anxious. Our nerves were jangled. And I want to mention here that unfortunately you cannot do a great cause if you are a lonely wolf. So in this particular case, it was all about unity. It was all about a shared mission and vision. And I'm really happy that the Ukrainian Catholic University strives for ambitious goals and objectives. Why do you need to have such a big conference room with bathrooms and all the supporting infrastructure? But it does work. Have a look at all these beautiful people gathered here. Beauty is also in respect for other people. And I believe that business is not about business processes. It's not only about understanding how economy works, but it's also about what a person you are. So business reflects your personality. Well, there are certain things that we need to clarify here. I'm younger, so I have a much better memory, so I can clarify this story. Well, this idea originated from business, and it's true indeed that we had a meeting and Slavko voiced this idea. Then I shared this idea with Andriy Hudo. At that time, I worked for Galnaftogaz concern, and I remember that I shared this idea with Andriy when we were on the way to the Carpathians to conduct a workshop. Then, of course, we communicated this idea to SoftServe because there were some alumni of other business schools there, and they expressed their support for this idea. And then we had a beer get-together, and we started pondering over the concept of the business school. And Slavko said that we should approach the Ukrainian Catholic University with this idea. I was really perplexed because at that time I didn't really know that much about the Ukrainian Catholic University. Of course, I had my own perception like other Lviv residents, but I really liked the meetings that we had within the Ukrainian Catholic University back then. I would like to mention several people who are not present on this stage, but they were a part of this process. I want to mention Andriy Kurochka. Opatska, because Andriy knew all of us just a little bit. He worked at the Ukrainian Catholic University at that time, and he tried to bring us together. He tried to unite us somehow. He tried to make sure that we acted in concert, because basically we were negotiating. So Andriy tried to make sure that we were all tuned into positive outcome. Also, Tarasi Vlodko, Andriy Kostyuk, he's been helping the university with legal issues, and I remember that at that time he gave legal advice to the university, because of course the university didn't really want to incur losses because of these wild and crazy business people. And there was also Andriy Hrinchuk, who tried to consider and bring together all the interests, and it all resulted in our participation in recollection meetings in Przemysl. Well, at that time I didn't even know what this recollection meeting is. If you don't know what that is, it's a really, really cool thing, and I encourage you to participate in a recollection program. But I just want to point out that we felt great support from the management of the Ukrainian Catholic University. So there were no doubts or there were no hesitations. Of course, from time to time, we recontemplate and we change our perspectives, but once a decision is made, it's made. But I think that His Grace has a different understanding. No, I just want to add, well, it was your third year of trials with Medvedchuk, and I remember that we met at a reception. Back then, I didn't really know Yaroslav. I heard something about him, and during that reception, Yaroslav approached me and I remember that he said just two sentences. He said something like this to me: "You're doing a great job, hang in there. When I resolve my issues, I will be back and support you." At that time, the Ukrainian Catholic University didn't really have that much support from other people, and I was really astounded by this attitude. And then Yaroslav became an honorary senator of our university, and he has contributed a lot to our development. I think that meeting at the reception took place in 2007. I think it was 2007 because the Lviv Business School was founded in 2008. And he also said, we are in desperate need of business education. And Yaroslav also said something like, we like the style and patriotism of the Ukrainian Catholic University, including this Galician manifestation of patriotism. And we really adore the fact that there's no corruption in the Ukrainian Catholic University. This is what I heard from Yaroslav back then. I can talk for hours about this, but my answer was as follows. Let's talk about it. You need business education. You want to create a business school on the basis of the Ukrainian Catholic University, but is it really the best option? Maybe it's better if we help you as business create a business school. That was my position. I said to Yaroslav, if you have a clear vision for what you want this business school to be, then maybe your vision is not really in line with how we do things at the Ukrainian Catholic University. And that's why it was very important to spare enough time to bring these two worlds together, to find a compromise for these different interests. But there was one important aspect. He just said, don't worry, we will give the money. We just need the service from you. But there was also a question about the ownership of this school, whether the Ukrainian Catholic University will have a controlling package there. Because we could not really afford a situation when we have full responsibility on our shoulders for the activities of the Lviv Business School, but at the same time, we were not in full control. So we developed the following formula: 3 founders, 15% each. Then Sophia was the 4th one, 4%, and the Ukrainian Catholic University had 51%. And that was a decisive factor for the university management. And I knew that for each university, the co-founders would be ready to give some percentage back to the Ukrainian Catholic University. You know, it's just an anniversary. It's just an act of generosity and sacrifice. Because these co-founders represent large enterprises. They have thousands of staff, and they created this business school and became co-owners, not for financial gains. It was clear. And so we had the majority ownership, and therefore we knew that we would be able to deliver a certain quality. And whenever you initiate something, it's very important to create a common platform. When this university doesn't have a spiritual life anymore, when we reach the times when we cannot freely speak about God and spirituality and faith, it will be the end of this project, believe me. This is the key thing that differentiates the Ukrainian Catholic University from other institutions, even though these other educational institutions have more funds, they have high-level support, including presidential support, or they have good financial support from the government budget. And that's why we decided to go to a monastery. So we had to leave the typical and habitual environment of our university and go to a monastery in Przemysl. And I think we are still on this pilgrimage. I'm not even doubting the fact that this dialogue has a historic meaning for our country. Whenever we had meetings before that, like when our female students from the theology department said that they were students of our university, then other people thought that they would become nuns. So everyone around thought that the Ukrainian Catholic University was a specialized university, that it was all about Sunday. And you know, I always oversleep on Sundays, so this university doesn't have anything to do with me. And back then, we had a lot of other issues that we had to contemplate. That's why we had to think things through. Of course, there was a certain fear. I have to admit that. And we also had a lot of questions about the logo. What will we have there? Lviv Theological Academy at the Ukrainian Catholic University, or of the Ukrainian Catholic University, and we wanted to distance ourselves from that brand because we wanted to really create and shape that brand. So at that time, it was weird to have a business school within a Catholic university. We realized that it would be difficult to sell that concept. And a lot of people who came from the East, they would come to the doors of the Lviv Theological Academy, and they smelled incense. But right now, the brand of the Ukrainian Catholic University is on its peak. And in the foundation, we have this spirit and learning of a spiritual life. This is the foundation for the Ukrainian Catholic University. And the fact that we have a business school within our university has helped a lot to mature this university and develop it. So that's the way the story evolved. Well, the only thing I can do now is say thank you for these memories. Well, unfortunately, we have less time for questions right now, but I really hope that you have already heard some of the answers to your questions. We have a time for just about 2 questions. Introduce yourself and address your question to a particular person. Hello, Christ is born. My name is Lyubinets. I do not represent business here. I represent education. It's a little bit nerve-wracking for me to be the first one to ask a question, so I'm really sorry if there's anxiety and jitters. I would like to point out that I represent those disciplines that you've mentioned. I teach philosophy and humanities, so it's been a great pleasure for me to hear certain statements from you. It's great that there is a demand for humanities and liberal arts in the world and in Ukraine, including among Ukrainian businesses. But I would also like to mention that the current Ukrainian university has a very small share of humanities in their curricula. And the saddest thing is that humanities are reducing in scale in our education. So I'm seeking your advice. Which doors should we knock on? How can we spread this message that philosophy and humanities are a basis of humanity, and the primary task of a higher educational institution is upbringing a human being in the first place and then developing a specialist? Well, that's what we started with back in 2008. It's true indeed that there's a great need, but it's a need that is not really fully understood. I mean, who of you thinks of philosophy? Well, we can see only few raised hands. So you can already find some potential consumers of humanities and liberal arts and philosophy. But as you can see, this need of philosophy and humanities is not really understood in society right now. There's such a concept in business as job to be done. So you need to explain to people what the benefit will be for them, how this will help them in the future. And it will not be an easy task. You will have to go a long way. But since there is this global trend, then this will make your job easier. My son is a student of sociology, and I decided to conduct a sociological study. I opened the Forbes journal, and there was one section there dedicated to young entrepreneurs in Ukraine, and I analyzed that most of these young Ukrainian entrepreneurs are graduates of the Kyiv Mohyla Academy, and Kyiv Mohyla Academy focuses on humanities in the first place. I've been in business for 25 years, and believe me, business is not about your ability to develop a business plan or do some business math. Business about who you are, what you are. Whether you respect your clients, whether you express reverence for your partners, whether you are ready to tighten the belt and muster up all the patience that you have to set off on a long journey. So this is the moral skeleton that you need to have. And this moral skeleton is the key of success to any business person. But I also agree that it's also important to have a width of knowledge, something that Sophia mentioned. But I want to go back to the previous question. Don't really have any associations with the party congresses. But anyway, I want to make an announcement. I want to make a very important statement. I will even stand up. And it's not because it's the 10th anniversary and the Ukrainian Catholic University is the #1 university in Ukraine and in the future will become the #1 university in the world. But it's because our child, our product is steady on its feet. Maybe sometimes I'm even an interference. I want to present my share to the Ukrainian Catholic University, to the Lviv Business School. So basically I'm giving away my share. Thank you very much, Yaroslav. And we have time for one more question. My name is Roman. I'm one of the first graduates of the MS program in entrepreneurship and innovations. I'm also a little bit anxious. We talked about the past, about the present. We briefly touched upon the Davos Forum and the Alibaba founder. We all understand that the world is changing very rapidly, and we can see that not everyone is able to move with the times. Hence my question to all of you. In the opinion of the Lviv Business School, how will business change in the near future? And how is the Lviv Business School willing to support these changes? So do we have a clear vision for potential changes in the future? And do we know what to do, how to act in this wild world of rapid changes? I think it's a question to Sophia Opatska in the first place. How do you see the Lviv Business School in 10 years or 20 years? Well, it's a quite challenging question, I would say. I think that the #1 step is to comprehend and accept the status quo. And I think that our team, and by our team, I mean not only the staff members, but also the faculty members. So we, as the LvBS team, understand the status quo. And then it's also about whether we learn fast enough. This is the only recipe that I have for all of us. We need to move with the times. We need to learn fast enough. Maybe you know more than I do, but honestly, I don't really know what to expect in the future. And there are different reasons for that. It's not only about economic challenges, but it's also about geopolitical challenges. Every day you wake up and you see a new challenge that you need to rise to. So we just need to comprehend the existing situation, take it in, and accept it as a norm. And of course, we also need to think all the time how to become better, how to develop, how to self-improve. This is something that can help, at least for a short time. I also want to add a couple of words. I agree with Sophia here. We cannot really forecast the future. Of course, there are certain trends. There are a lot of experts and professionals that make some predictions, and whenever something happens, they always say, we told you. But you cannot really forecast the future. There's the anti-fragility theory or the black swan theory. You can make some forecasts, but then something might happen that will radically turn things around. So we need to just make sure that we become anti-fragile. And that's why the Lviv Business School wants to help people think and contemplate. We use this trendy phrase of leadership development. But I think that the Holy Spirit has to be present everywhere. So this Holy Spirit has to be omnipresent and fill everyone and everything around. And this is something that the Lviv Business School can contribute to. No one can tell you with certainty what might happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Everything is changing very rapidly. If we look back 5 years ago, then we can see how the oil products retail business has altered. The product portfolio is different now. The margin is different. And the ways people fill their cars with gas. Because back 5 years ago, no one even thought about car sharing. No one really thought about electric cars. And now we can see that more and more people, in particular young people, use car sharing services. Not everyone wants to have their own car. And young people don't really treat a car as a necessity. So the industry that I represent has changed so fast that it's hard to predict what might happen in the future. If you asked me, well, you developed your plan or your budget for 5 or 10 years, is it the same that the plan that you developed 5 years ago, or were you able to fulfill that plan at least by 20%? The only answer that I can give is no. I mean, we develop plans for 5 years, but we cannot really fulfill them, because if you developed your strategic plans of 5, 7 years, then of course your 2018 budget will not be in line with those 5-year strategic plans. And the main vocation of the contemporary business managers or even government officials is different now. And our governor can share some of the challenges that the government is facing, because everyone expects performance from the government as well. And the biggest value of any management team is as follows, and it doesn't really matter whether you manage a retail business or an energy business. So the biggest value is the capability to adapt rapidly to any changes that emerge around. And if you are fast in adaptation, then this is your key to success in business. So the ability to quickly adapt to change can become your point of differentiation. If we compare the situation 50 years ago with what we have now, we will see that the competitive advantage is much narrower time-wise. You cannot really maintain your competitive advantage for a long time. So you invested a lot of time, you did R&D, you hired a lot of people to create a competitive advantage. And in the past, this competitive advantage lasted for 5 years or 10 years. But right now, it's very different. You can easily lose this competitive advantage within several months because it's much easier for people to copy your competitive advantage. So you hit a lot of bumps, you lost a lot of money, you did a lot of trials to make that product real. You need to move even faster now. You need to return your investments as soon as possible because in half a year, most likely, you will already lose that cutting edge. Therefore, the ability to quickly adapt to change is the key to success in business and in any other sector. Because the needs of business 10 or 20 years ago differ substantially from what businesses need right now. And I think that the Lviv Business School should also shape its own point of differentiation. You need to grow your competitive advantages. You need to understand that you might quickly lose these competitive advantages. And if you want to be more competitive, if you want to be on the cutting edge, then you need, of course, to communicate with your alumni, with your partners, with your friends, because you need to draw inspiration from somewhere. They need to help you shape the necessary demand, and based on this, you will be able to get that point of differentiation that will help you become better than others, at least for a short period of time. I will be very succinct. I know quite a lot about the Ukrainian Catholic University strategy until 2020. So if you read this strategy, you will find a lot of answers there. And you can also find a lot of answers also because we have already made a lot of changes in our strategy because of the external changes. So I don't have any worries there because there is trust, and we are definitely willing and ready to respond to global challenges. The philosopher inside me is screaming, let's continue, let's not stop this discussion. But I also have a mathematician inside telling me that we need to stick to the agenda. We have some other activities planned in our celebration. So at this point, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our colleagues, to all those who have created the history of the Lviv Business School and will continue doing that. The Ukrainian Catholic University received a present, and the speakers of our discussion will also get some presents, a small announcement. We all are moving to the cathedral right now for a liturgy. You will receive some papers with prayers, and then we will have an unofficial reception in the canteen of our Lviv Business School building. Thank you very much. Everyone is invited.